So let's talk about something that honestly affects every single one of us. That constant battle between what we want to do, the big important goals, and what we actually end up doing, like scrolling on our phones for hours. We're going to break down how you can actually rewire your brain to stop chasing those cheap, easy rewards and start finding real, deep satisfaction in making progress.
All right, let's just jump right into it. Be honest with yourself for a second. How many times today did you just reach for your phone? Not because you needed to, but just out of habit. Maybe you were checking for notifications that weren't even there. Well, that little twitch, that impulse, it isn't random at all. It's a trained response. And the reason for that is, and this is going to sound a little dramatic, but it's true, you've been hijacked. No, not by some shadowy hacker in a dark room. You've actually been hijacked by your own biology, which has been cleverly and constantly manipulated by the world around us. And we're about to figure out exactly how that works.
So that brings us right to our first big idea. You've been hijacked. And here, we're going to unpack what I call the dopamine distortion, which is the real reason why just staying focused feels so much harder than it used to.
You see, our modern world is basically designed around this thing called the quick fix loop. A notification pings on your phone. That's the trigger. You immediately check it. That's the behavior. And you get a tiny little hit of novelty or social approval. That's the fleeting reward. This loop, repeated hundreds of times a day, literally trains your brain to want constant stimulation, not genuine satisfaction.
And this really lays out the two different tracks our brains can be on, right? On one side, you've got the quick fix loop. It's all about short, unstable spikes of reward that make our long-term goals just kind of fade into the background. But on the other side, you've got the progress loop. This is where the reward comes from the effort itself, building the slow, stable, incredible momentum. That's the one we're aiming for.
Okay, so how do we actually build that progress loop? Well, first we've got to understand the chemical that's running the whole show. So let's talk about the real truth behind dopamine, which isn't the pleasure chemical, it's the pursuit chemical.
And this right here is one of the biggest misunderstandings out there about our brains. We've all heard that dopamine is the pleasure molecule, but that's not really the whole story. It's actually the molecule of pursuit. It's about motivation. It's about wanting something. It's about the anticipation of the reward.
So here's the key takeaway. Dopamine is the engine that gets you to the reward. It is not the reward itself. And that quick fix loop we talked about, it hijacks this system by constantly making us want the next tiny thing, keeping us stuck in this loop of perpetual, unsatisfying pursuit.
All right, so we've kind of diagnosed the problem. We know what's going on under the hood. Now for the good stuff. Let's get super practical. Here are 3 incredibly powerful, science-backed ways you can start building that progress loop and literally start rewiring your brain today.
First up, we have an absolute powerhouse of a strategy, micro milestones. This is the ultimate weapon against that feeling of being overwhelmed by a giant goal. Look, big goals are amazing, but they often starve your brain of dopamine because the finish line just feels way too far away to be real. So what do? We break them down into ridiculously small wins. Instead of write a book, your goal is just write 1 paragraph. It's not get in shape, it's do 5 push-ups. You see what we're doing? We're making the goal so small, so achievable, that it's almost harder not to do it.
And this is where the magic happens. On a chemical level, every single time you complete one of these tiny tasks, your brain gets a little mini surge of dopamine. It's like a chemical pat on the back, a little voice saying, yes, you did it, keep going. And this is how you make progress itself feel addictive in the best possible way.
Okay, our second method is something called process-fueled rituals. And this is a real game changer because it teaches your brain to enjoy the work itself, not just the prize at the end. The entire goal here is to attach that awesome feeling of reward to the effort, not just the outcome.
And it's so simple. Here's how it works. You pick a cue. It could be anything, like lighting a specific candle or playing a certain song that you only do right before you start a focused work session. Over time, your brain creates this powerful link. It starts to associate that ritual with the rewarding feeling of focus, and pretty soon you actually start to crave the work itself.
And finally, our third tool is the progress journal. Now, this is so important because you know how our brains are kind of like Velcro for bad experiences and Teflon for good ones? We're naturally wired with a negativity bias. We always see what's wrong or what's missing. Well, this method flips that completely on its head. It actively retrains your brain to see growth and find evidence of your own progress. And it's so simple. Every single day, you take like
2 minutes, that's it, and you log the evidence. It's not a diary, it's a highlight reel. One thing you made progress on, one thing you learned, one small problem you solved. This builds this quiet, unshakable confidence that's based on cold, hard proof that you are in fact moving forward.
So, when you start putting these tools into practice, the micro milestones, the rituals, the journal, something really amazing starts to shift. You move from a world that runs on discipline, on just forcing yourself to do things, to a world that runs on desire, where making progress actually starts to feel good.
And that, honestly, is the whole point of this. This isn't about grinding harder or having more willpower or being tougher on yourself. It's about understanding that your brain's wiring isn't fixed. You can change it. You don't have to fight your brain. You just have to work with it. You just need to retrain it.
And it kind of leads to this really beautiful idea, right? We're so often obsessed with crossing the finish line. But what these tools help us see is that the real lasting reward, it isn't in the outcome, it's in the person you become while you're doing the work.
Because let's be real, the climb is where you build your strength. The day-to-day progress is where the real change happens. When you learn to attach that feeling of reward to the process itself, you don't just achieve your goals, you start to genuinely enjoy the journey of becoming someone who can.
So I'll leave you with this question: the micro milestones, the process-fueled ritual, or the progress journal? You don't have to do all three at once. Just pick one. Just one. Start ridiculously small, start today, and let your brain start to remember what real progress actually feels like.